各位海内外的观众朋友，谢谢您常常在线上，不管参与我们的直播还是影片的播放。好快的时间已经3年了。您记不记得我们频道创立的第一天？这是在3年前，2022年的7月9号的那一天。那个时候呢，摄影机是借来的，包括灯光都是好朋友突然之间提供给我们。当然呢，摄影师是临时的志工。很多的朋友提供了资源，协助我们完成了首播。这是在当时没有任何的资源，更是没有金主，只有一个简单的信念。在这个非常混乱而且有点分裂的年代当中，我们希望可以说真话，做深度，守住价值，做我所熟悉的事情。3年的时间很快过去了，这条路走得相当的艰辛，非常的不容易，但因为有您，我们撑了下来。过去3年来，我们的小军超人 Plus 已经突破了2亿5千万人次的观看，而且订阅人数已经来到了47万人。不过在会员人数方面，才刚刚突破了2000人。这些都不只是一个数字，而是每一个关心台湾、关心国际、关心真相的灵魂，一次一次透过了按下播放的选择，您跟我站在一起。我相信过去这段时间，你也曾经在深夜里头听着小君姐对着镜头娓娓道来，也许你也曾经在混乱的新闻洪流中，靠着我们的分析，找回了思考的力量。我们没有背景，我们有的是立场。什么立场呢？站在人民的这一边，站在台湾的这一边。一人难挑千金担，但如果我们愿意一起挑，一起抬，千金也能够步步为营。很多人在这段时间常常问小君姐，你怎么撑下来的？哇，3年很不容易耶，你是怎么烧钱的？其实很难很短的时间之内跟大家分享。其实我也有时候会笑笑说，因为我有很多人请我喝咖啡，那是一杯又一杯支持的象征，甚至写着你不孤单的讯息，甚至呢，在我的户头里头告诉我，这是他奉献我继续努力的一点点小小的 donate， 一点小小的回馈。所以呢，每一次有人加入会员，都会说我愿意和你一起走下去，我感激在心，点滴在心头。我们都知道台湾需要有声音，但是这样的声音不能够靠运气，也不能够靠流量的算法，它只能够靠一群有信念的人默默支持。所以在今天，小君姐再一次诚挚邀请您成为我们的频道会员，就像是一根根的竹签撑起了一座竹楼，就像是一滴滴的露水，它可以凝聚成改变的力量，不用很多，只要您愿意。事实上，我告诉您，累积比如说50杯的咖啡的价格，就能够让我们多录1集的节目，可以多诞生一篇深度报道，多陪台湾走一段更深远的路。3年的时间当然不是一个句点，它是一个全新的起点，让我们在下一个3年当中可以走得更稳更远。也感谢您一路的相挺，也期待您加入我们的行列，点选下方加入会员，或者是小君喝咖啡，一起让真实的声音不被淹没。我相信您知道，我们的存在是因为您，而您也是让我们继续存在的关键性力量。有心就有力，我们永远不放弃。谢谢您。
Thank you for the introduction. Welcome to the third panel today, Impacts of Economic, Technological and Industrial Diplomacy on International Affairs. As just introduced just now, I'm Thompson, Chair of the Taiwan Foreign Correspondents Club and a correspondent with Nikkei Asia. I will quickly and briefly introduce our distinguished speakers today. I think on my immediate right, would be Stefan Korkov, Associate Professor of Political Science, Lyon Institute of Political Studies in France. And further to my right is Veronika Jakubczak, an Associate Professor at the Main School of Fire Services in Poland. Right to her is Matej Simauczyk, Executive Director of the think tank Central European Institute of Asian Studies in Slovakia. And beside him is Tristan Liu, President of the Taipei University of Marine Technology. And last but not least, we have Holmes Liao, former McDonnell Douglas Aerospace representative in Taiwan. As we have seen today with a number of panels and keynote sessions, there has been unprecedented attention on Taiwan in recent years, not just about Taiwan's chips and the threats Taiwan is facing, but also what Taiwan and the government here intend to do in terms of diplomacy and their economic, defense, and security policies. I want to start with a quote from Ghost Nation, a new book recently published by the veteran Taiwan-focused correspondent Chris Horton. In the book's introduction, the author cited Foreign Minister Lin Jialong's words, and I quote, "Beyond semiconductors, Taiwan could serve as a manufacturing hub for drones and other military equipment that the US and other countries are struggling to produce at scale," the foreign minister said. The author then added that it seems that the Lai administration's approach to the second Trump era is to position itself as a proactive partner. And I would say that this is not only limited to Taiwan's relations with America, but also with Europe, with Japan, with South and Southeast Asia and beyond. Minister Lin has made economic diplomacy a core part of his flagship initiative, pushing for more trade and commerce overseas and leveraging Taiwan's technology and industrial might abroad. He has also sought to put that into practice by visiting a dozen countries in the first half a year as foreign minister, including accompanying President Lai to the Pacific Islands via Guam and Hawaii, also to Europe with a delegation of drone companies, and more recently to the US and Japan. And I think with that, I will now invite speakers to give their opening remarks, perhaps starting with Matej. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Thompson, for the introduction, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to join you here today. I think that I like the quote that you've shared right now, right? That Taiwan has a lot to offer, and oftentimes we have been reducing Taiwan merely to the idea of semiconductor cooperation, while there's many more areas of economic cooperation where both European countries and Taiwan can work together much more closely. And not just in terms of economic diplomacy, but also in terms of policy coordination when it comes to economic security policy as well, where both sides have quite a bit to learn from each other. And I want to focus on this aspect a little bit more in my introductory remarks. Talking of economic security and the EU's approach and what it can learn from Taiwan, I think we need to go a little bit back in time and actually understand where the EU's economic security turn has emerged from, because for many years EU has been quite negligent in this area. It had a very positive outlook on trade cooperation and investment cooperation with China until certain wake-up calls happened. And the first major one happened in Germany around 2015, where one of the crown jewels of German economy, the robotics company KUKA, all of a sudden stopped being a German company because it was taken over by Chinese investors. This, of course, needed some time to trickle down into the collective policy thinking within Europe, but since then we've seen EU doubling down on dealing with economic dependencies on China as well as other actors, but really bulk of the economic security policy of the EU has been focused on China. Of course, I don't think I need to talk much about the case of Lithuania, which was really the last major sort of watershed moment after which EU has, I think, no longer any major illusions about what kind of risks stem out of over-dependence on Chinese economy. Nevertheless, of course, the job of EU's economic security turn is not yet done, even though we've recently had adopted the economic security strategy in EU, which has pledged to upgrade our inbound and outbound investment screening mechanisms and looks at protecting various key technologies, both through research security measures, as well as strengthening export control regimes and looking at preventing weaponization of supply chains by diversifying them and working with like-minded countries like Taiwan in establishing new value chains that would be free of this sort of undue influence of authoritarian regimes, including China. So if we want to move forward in our economic security thinking, we of course need to recognize that none of the democratic countries has actually fully figured out this space, right? Each actor has its own strengths and weaknesses, different experiences, and exchanging best practices and lessons learned. Both the positive lessons as well as the negative lessons will be key to succeeding in developing efficient economic security policy. So when it comes to EU and what it can learn from Taiwan, I think there's quite a few areas where there's a space for better policy collaboration, which would of course be quite helpful for Taiwan, because it can serve as a springboard for deeper political dialogue between European Union and its member states on one hand and Taiwan. So one of them being the outbound investment screening. This is something that is still quite a novel idea within the European economic security thinking. We still lack a proper mechanism on this, even though it has been identified as one of the areas where EU needs to move forward down the line, especially when it comes to preventing proliferation of sensitive technologies out of EU to authoritarian regimes. Of course, Taiwan has had the outbound investment screening for quite some time, and there's a lot of lessons and practical lessons that EU can learn from Taiwan here, especially when it comes to identifying financial outflows out of EU to China, for example. Supply chain resilience, of course, is another key aspect where Taiwan has been really promoting this idea for collaboration for quite some time. But also other areas are quite important, I think. And one issue that's often overlooked in the broader discussions on economic security is actually talking about what to do once the economic coercion is already happening. And even though we've seen the EU moving in this area a little bit by adopting the anti-coercion mechanism, it still sort of doesn't have a response to how to, for example, help the victims of economic coercion. And this is something where I think you can draw some inspiration from Taiwan, as Taiwan's been quite proactive historically when it came to helping the companies that were suffering due to economic coercion from China, for example. So think about the examples of aid and policy help that Taiwan was providing, for example, to the farmers that were being targeted by Chinese coercive measures. Of course, we cannot talk about economic security in isolation only. It is an issue that's actually very deeply connected to hybrid warfare as such, and FIMI operations by adversarial actors. And we've seen this time and time again, where actors like China have been conducting FIMI operations within EU with the aim to delegitimize any sort of dialogue about strengthening economic security measures, which means that we need to merge these two policy areas. And given Taiwan's extensive experience in countering Chinese influence operations, I think there's quite some space for also coordination in this area, which is already happening to some extent. Nevertheless, as I said in the beginning, this sort of learning trajectory needs to go both ways, right? It cannot be one-way street, and there's quite a few things, of course, that where EU can help Taiwan as well with its own economic security. One of the key issues, of course, being energy security, which remains to be probably one of the weaker links in Taiwan's overall resilience. Of course, there's been a good development over the past year in the wind-generated energy, where EU and Taiwan had, towards the end of last year, finally settled their WTO dispute, which will allow more proactive collaboration in this space. But also there is quite a lot of untapped geothermal energy potential in Taiwan, of course, being on the Pacific Rim of Fire, which is rather underused for now, and there's quite a few European companies that have expertise in developing geothermal energy, which could be a vital contribution to Taiwan's overall energy mix. Of course, this sort of economic collaboration between EU and Taiwan and economic security collaboration does not have to be only happening in this sort of bilateral fashion. There's quite a strong argument to be made also for its external dimension, and it was mentioned in the keynote before. Collaboration between EU and Taiwan on exploring synergies between Global Gateway and the new southbound policy could be quite a big contribution to countering China's economic offer to the Global South countries, which is a problem for both the EU and Taiwan. So I will stop here, I think, because my time is running out. But I think that there's quite a bit more that could be still explored. And you've mentioned drones before, so of course there's still a lot of opportunity to discuss economic cooperation in these areas besides the semiconductor industry, so that we can have more proactive thinkings in terms of which industries would have most synergy that would be helpful for fulfilling not just economic interests of both sides, but also broader geopolitical and security needs of both sides.
Thank you, Matej. Very good point about the potential for drones cooperation. I think I'll now turn to Stefan to give his opening remarks.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you very much. Chairman Chen and President Lai, dear Thompson, dear friends and colleagues, it's always very delicate when we're in Taiwan to be asked to discuss in front of you about matters that you know much better than we do. But it's a pleasure, though, because we know that you trust the ideas we could have from time to discuss with you common matters of common interest. So what I'm going to talk about today is the space that can be devoted to AI in military affairs, especially with the backdrop of China's modernizing military capabilities, gray zone tactics, and what we could call 2.0 political warfare. And that has led in recent years and months to artificial intelligence rapidly becoming central to both strategic planning and operational execution, and Taiwan is certainly no exception. AI can serve numerous goals in military affairs. I tried a little list of it. Collective massive information, analyzing them quickly, anticipating adverse decisions, help design and use of war games, detect early signs of decisions to attack or to launch offensives, help analyze the nature of the threat, detect and warn about dangerous patterns in the context of hybrid warfare, propose the adequate proportioned response to and avoid useless escalations, accelerate response times, operate autonomous systems, of course, whether lethal or non-lethal, and enhance ammunition supply, and even managing complex personnel issues like in Japan, including stress management with early anticipation of the morale of the troops, countering disinformation, debunking fake news, establishing internet sentinels. Well, the list is very long. The first point I will talk briefly about is the use of AI in the competition for strategic superiority, with an example in mind, first of all, the United States, which of course is leader in military AI innovation, with a program like Replicator aims at deploying thousands of inexpensive autonomous drones and systems to quickly saturate conflict zones. There is also in use recently a platform called ThunderForge that is using AI to process battlefield data in real time that is used by commanders already to make rapid decisions. Taiwan is not immune from this development, not being able or considering not being able to match China's conventional forces. Then, of course, Taiwan is relying on high-tech solutions to build an asymmetrical deterrence and respond to aggression. The Ministry of National Defense in Taiwan has actively invested in military applications of artificial intelligence recently, with the development of virtual anchors, strengthening intelligence analysis, and improving the effectiveness of weapon systems such as drones, satellites, or missiles, and has established recently a National Defense Innovation Group. You've probably heard, if you live in Taiwan, about the massive investment in drone productions, with an order placed recently of, I think, 48,000 units. And the aim of developing AI is more generally for early warning systems, streamlining the chain of command, and using AI in military training exercises and stimulation, as we saw last month with the Hanguang exercises that were mentioned earlier today. But AI is also used in information warfare, and this is a domain in which Taiwan is obviously very concerned as a target of Chinese disinformation campaigns. AI can be used, this is no surprise to anyone, I suppose, to create fake content, to create deep fakes, and to launch targeted propaganda on social media, which are aimed always at polarizing public opinion or eroding trust of the citizen in democratic institutions. So if AI is used to produce these things, then AI can be used to counter them. And Taiwan is developing since many years already, several years, an AI-driven countermeasure series that can be quite useful for us outside in the other parts of the world to understand how is being experimented an authoritarian digital strategy that is not, of course, the fact a strategy led by China only. We all know that Russia is experimenting the same thing, and we can try to trace back some connections between Russia and China. And there was quite a lot of discussion recently in Taiwan on an event when a certain president of a certain political party had harsh words on the president, on President Lai, and that reminded us of some strategies initiated in the Russian capital. The last point I would like to address is the ethical issue of the military use in AI. Of course, it's the core issue, or one of the core issues. But first, I would like to switch to Japan. Initially, I wanted to make a comparison between Taiwan, Japan, and the United States in the difference of the use they make of AI. Then I had no time. But Japan is a specific case since it's a constitutionally pacifist country. It's not supposed to develop weapons for projections of troops outside of its boundaries, as you know, and is opposed very clearly to the use of AI in lethal autonomous weapons. However, Japan has still worked quite interestingly towards integration of AI into its cybersecurity and logistics systems and intelligence gathering efforts. And also, that's where I found this example, addressing personnel shortages. But Japan is the illustration, I think, of a wider debate that has yet to be held nationally and internationally, nationally in our nations, which is the ethical problems raised by the military use of AI, which is a question that is already addressed in Taiwan. The Ministry of National Defense in Taiwan has already quite worked a lot, as far as I know, about this, whereas we know that Taiwan, being a boundary front, could really think that there is no time for such debate, and there is a question here, and that will be my final point in 1 minute. So, of course, you probably all know that the question behind this ethical question behind what I'm talking about is whether a decision can be left to an autonomous weapon system which has lethal capabilities. Should we leave it the decision to fire or not? And it's already one level of the problem. A sub-level of the problem, should we allow it to fire on civilians or soldiers only, etc.? This is a very tricky issue. Of course, discussions are underway in the United Nations, but there is no international consensus on that, on banning or regulating autonomous lethal weapons. This remains elusive. So for Taiwan, the issue is quite tricky because Taiwan has to defend itself, but as a democracy, so we could hope that Taiwan would uphold democratic norms, but it has to defend itself against an existential threat. This is not simple, which happens to originate in a neo-totalitarian country that most likely doesn't feel constrained legally or ethically in the use of AI in the decision made by autonomous weapon systems to shoot and potentially kill soldiers and civilians. And this is here, in front of us, on the other side of the Taiwan Strait. So the question is very tricky, and without a debate within the society and within the Congress, the Li Faiyuan, should Taiwan, in case of an absolute emergency, resort to techniques that are used by the other side without establishing previously a legal cadre? Would democracy simply survive if the country survives and that people then are asking, why did you do that? That's probably perspective, but I think we have to raise the issue because, after all, President Lai did it in April this year with his 17-point 17项措施 addressing these issues without previous or obvious public consultation. But the thing is that the Taiwanese society and the Taiwanese Congress are highly divided on very tricky issues. It would have been probably difficult to lead such a public debate, but it's raising the issue whether Taiwan can or not trespass or avoid this step. This is really a very difficult question, but Taiwan is not alone in this because we are not in the US or in Europe in a position now to make significant progress on that issue. So I'm making a proposition, and time is up, I will finish on this. A proposition that I made last month, in June, in the Lin Yixiong's foundation, the Cilin Jijinhui, that Taiwan could consider, it's just a suggestion of course, but could consider the idea of preliminary talks to organize in Taipei or in Taiwan an international conference to collectively reflect on the legal norms and ethical limits to the use of AI in lethal autonomous weapon system. That would be very useful for the world, and that would probably enable, if successful, Taiwan to shine globally for its contribution on this issue. That would also put pressure on China not to allow itself such use, though I'm not very optimistic, that would set standards, limits, and state what is legal and what is not legal, which, in other words, would decide in advance to render illegal future unruled AI usage by China in lethal military weapons. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. You raised some very valid questions about the ethical and legal dilemmas Taiwan faces as it seeks to fend off coercion and threats from neighboring China. I think with that, I'll now turn to, on our right, Veronica, to give her address.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and to the Prospect Foundation. It's an honor to be part of such an inspiring community. And I've been listening to the presentations of my colleagues with a lot of ideas. So once again, thank you everybody for the inspiration. And I would like to express my full support to the ideas, to the issues that were mentioned by two gentlemen in our panel. And I would like to also address what has been said before. And I'm very excited to hear more and more people expressing their support to strengthening the cooperation and thinking about something more than only capital gain. And coming from Poland, coming from Europe, it was very painful, yet very important lesson that we have learned ever since the war in Ukraine started. And it was, I hope, a final lesson that showed us that making bigger business, making better capital gains are important. At the same time, we have to focus on something that is called strategic autonomy. And there have been many ambassadors of this idea, of this phenomena, with the President Macron, just one person to mention. But I think what I have understood from the exposés today is that we have to think of something bigger, something that would fit in a new manifestation of globalization processes. And I'm a big proponent of supporting cooperation between the countries that share the same values, democratic values. And I also would like the economies to prosper. But why don't we, instead of focusing on cutting the costs and increasing the gain, the capital gain, why don't we try to combine the two? Making the economy prosperous, at the same time, not thinking only about the money and the costs, but also trying to find the synergy where we, meaning democratic countries, stand up together, think about our resources, think about our capabilities, and not only create stronger economies, make more workplaces, protect our technologies, join our forces to make better technologies without creating vulnerabilities and increasing dependencies when it comes to our reliance on natural resources coming from non-democratic countries. Because we live in an era of gray zone conflict, hybrid conflict, and unfortunately, studying hybrid conflict, hybrid warfare, hybrid activities for a while, it has proven that non-democratic actors that are very often going hand in hand with non-state actors, they are exploiting what we create by ourselves. They don't really have to do much because we kind of serve them on a silver plate whatever they can work with. And there were so many important issues mentioned now. Old threats and new threats. New opium wars, for instance, with respect to fentanyl. Our dependencies on energy, natural resources in general. So, as a Poland representative, I would like to highlight that as Poland, we are trying to do our best to increase economic exchange between Taiwan and Poland. And for instance, just the difference between the amount of unmanned aerial vehicles that we have purchased between the last year and this year has been enormous, because it has grown by 750%. And Poland is #1 purchaser of the unmanned aerial vehicles. So this is not only ideas I'm talking about, but I'm talking about concrete steps. It's difficult to talk much more about the diplomacy with the respect to technology, economy, and industry, because the presentation that my predecessors delivered were so complex. But I would also like to tackle the issue related to development of new technologies, green technologies. Many of us might know that they mainly rely on rare earth minerals. And I was really happy to hear the voice of the Canada representative stating that you are developing and, please correct me if I'm wrong, willing to share your resources, despite of the fact that this technology and excavation processing is very demanding on many levels, including the various kind of threats. At the same time, I would like to highlight that we have different technologies. When it comes to energy, there was mentioned geothermal, and we could really be focusing both as Europe or Taiwan in development of this technology. And when it comes to batteries, we not necessarily even need rare earth minerals or lithium, but we can, for instance, turn into technology that uses salt and water. So let's just be innovative. And I think that once we start thinking more comprehensively, without being so obsessed with economic growth and capital gain, we can really focus more on sustainability, strategic autonomy between the countries that share the same values. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. I think now we'll turn to Tristan, who is the president of the Taipei University of Marine Technology.
Thank you, Thompson. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here. I have very little time, so I'm going to just straightforward express my own ideas. Okay. Let me begin by telling you two small stories. In 2019, I was invited by the state government of the United States to join a startup forum held in the Netherlands. I remember the opening remarks made by former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He said, "We got people from everywhere but China. This forum has no Chinese company, has no Chinese people." And everybody applaud. Because I'm the host, I own my own party, I got to decide what kind of guest I want to invite. Very straightforward, because we're talking about innovation among democratic economies. So I would like to say, any international organization that we have seen so far, their failure has been truly because of some intervene from the communism countries, not only China but also other member economies. So if we want to move things forward, I'm a straightforward guy, and also I want to solve problems. So I spent 20 years in APEC. Every time we make a proposal to use APEC money, we got rejected by China. And we have no choice but to use our own money, because we give money. We also make some donation to the APEC to run some specific programs. For example, women entrepreneurship program, that kind of stuff. And we got, very intensive participation from our member economies. So I'm just saying that I'm proposing a new framework. It's called the greed-based international framework. It doesn't have to be attached with a geographical, point of view. So everybody talks about EU. Everybody talks about, Asia Pacific regions. Let me tell you straightforwardly. In this government, in this administration under President Lai, Ministry of Foreign Affairs focusing on topics and issue-centered cooperation framework. So we team up with maybe Philippines and also from Czech Republic. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't tie to traditional geographical limitations. So it's all about topic-centered, and it's all about value-centered. And also it drives very interesting interactions among diplomats across those countries. So whenever we go to the Philippines, we talk to US ambassadors in Philippines. We talk to Japanese ambassadors in Philippines. So it's more like a metric cooperation framework. It's not two ways. It's not only bilateral, but you can form a very interesting multilateral, symmetrical, and metrical framework. So everybody might ask where the money come from. Okay, that's very interesting questions. I give a thought. I think everybody is very familiar with the triple, the triple helix, right? In the past days, especially, I think in APEC or somewhere else, okay, we cherish the participation of business leaders, especially for multinational companies. We have ABAC, but in other international organizations, the business community doesn't have a voice, at least, in the mainstream. So, I mean, why not let the international companies and, cherish, democratic values, cherish the, strategic topics, like our honorable friend from Poland said, strategic autonomy, that should include key industry leaders and also academia, especially think tanks. So money can come from the international cooperations with the ethic codes, with the play rules that agreed among those key democratic leaders. so that we can incorporate those leaders to take on much more important issues like our honorable guest from France said about environmental issues. Those could be solved by the joint efforts, not only by the government, but also by the business leaders. That also can explain how I want to break through the political dilemma in Taiwan, because you have, blue and green party against each other. But if you allow the business community to speak up, to lead the programs that could provide long-lasting financial support and also agenda settings, and also with the proper guideline, the proper support or guidelines by the government officials, it can also incorporate public opinions or NGOs. So I really, glad to see more and more, successful cases. Maybe from UK, we see, IISS holding up several very successful forums around the world in the Middle East or somewhere else. We should have that, more and more. So try to figure out to pin down the agenda and also cooperate, but not with too many countries. Maybe we can start from 3 or 4, just like Quad. But Quad is only limited to government officials. We can incorporate more. And with that, I will conclude my first round speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. And last but not least, we will now turn to Holmes, the former McDonnell Douglas Aerospace representative in Taiwan. Please.
Thank you, Thompson. As many of you may know, McDonnell Douglas no longer exists. In fact, it was absorbed by Boeing back in 1998. But I do not have any positions currently, so I'll be giving some blatant remarks. Be as blunt as possible, right? And like Tristan, I'm going to tell a story. And the story concerns most of the people in Taiwan and probably some in Germany. Are there any Germans here in the audience? Too bad, because I'm going to criticize German cynical diplomacy. Oh, there is. Okay, good to see you. So I hope that you can relay my message to German government. All right. So we all remember the global pandemic started in 2019, right? And slightly 1 year after that, there was a global semiconductor shortage. And then Germany's then economic minister, Peter Altmaier, wrote a letter to his Taiwanese counterpart, Miss Wang Meihua. She was the economic minister back then, asking for help to coordinate and prioritize the delivery of Taiwanese semiconductors to the German car industry. Without semiconductors, Germany cannot deliver vehicles, right? So next thing you know, Miss Wang, Minister Wang, coordinated a meeting, called TSMC chairman and the production vice presidents and so on and so forth to the office, and I think the NSC was also involved. At the end of the day, Germany's demands were met, right? End of the story. Always good. That was in January 2021. Less than 6 months later, the global pandemic erupted in Taiwan, and Taiwan did not have enough vaccine. So Taiwan requested Germany's help for BioNTech vaccine, right? There are several flavors of the vaccine. BioNTech was co-developed by Germans. But the Germans government shrugged their shoulders, say, well, hey guys, this is a business matter. Why don't you talk to Shanghai Fuxing, which is located in Taiwan, in China. And of course, it didn't end well. Taiwan, at the end of the day, did not get any vaccines from Shanghai, all right? So what is the lessons of this story? Right. First is Germany's cynical diplomacy, and second is Taiwan's strategic naivety. All right. Cynical because Germany's diplomacy was one-sided and is transactional, and it's short-sighted as well. At the same time, it's when it's inconvenient for them to go out of their way to help a country that have helped them in the past, which is also under healthcare crisis, they didn't bother to lift a finger. All right, so that's the cynical side of the German diplomacy. Now, Germany also suffered from strategic myopia and moral failure, because while Berlin enjoyed Taiwan's cooperation, it refused to help Taiwan in time of need, right? And so that's that, all right? Germans, of course, can do whatever they want, but can Taiwan do something more intelligently and do something to prevent this kind of stuff from happening? I think the answer is yes. So without going any further to criticize Taiwan's government, I think Taiwan can do something to prevent this kind of a non-reciprocal diplomacy from happening again. First, it is the Taiwanese government can formalize the reciprocal mechanisms, that is to negotiate conditional cooperation framework with whichever countries that has the supply request. And the second is to enhance international legal mechanism or instrument, that is to pursue bilateral, multilateral agreements in health or in technology that lock in obligations and of mutual assistance. And Taiwan can also institutionalize strategic resource coordination by elevating tasking of critical resources, in this case the semiconductor, to national level strategic importance and protocols. Not left, rather than leaving it to ad hoc ministerial exchanges between Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs and Germany's Ministry of Economics. And of course, the public diplomacy and transparency would be able to provide strategic support and openly communicate expectations when reciprocity in diplomatic channels and public messagings are expected. All right. So these are the prevention. Now, I would urge also Taiwan can do something more proactive. That is, with TSMC's global significance, people all around the world are talking about Taiwan semiconductor is a pivotal part of the global supply chain. But I would argue that with TSMC's significance, it can actually exert influence over the global supply chain. That is, TSMC should not be content with being a part of the global supply chain. It should reshape the form and the way the global supply chain should work. For instance, it has already happened that Taiwan is the foundry, Japan is the material, Europeans is the machinery, and the US may be the design, right? So how do we solidify this global partnership, right? This needs to be put in a more tangible framework. So Taiwan should really treat TSMC as a strategic national asset, not just a corporate entity. Everybody in Taiwan is talking about TSMC being a sacred mountain to protect the island country, right? But Taiwan, I think, can go one step further to form a strategic coordination council that involves TSMC, the national security councils, and so on. And whenever TSMC needs to expand overseas, it would require government approval, all right? So TSMC setting up shops in Germany, in Japan, in the US, should not be treated like giving candies out to whichever country that they want. Of course, TSMC has its own consideration, but Taiwan also has its strategic interest. So what I'm proposing, what I'm arguing is Taiwan needs to align TSMC's international posture with national interest. And the second is to push for a multilateral tech compact. Like I said earlier, just now, Taiwan should help write the rule of a trusted chip network, right? I would call it a chip NATO, right? Involving Japan, Germany, and the US, and so on. With Taiwan anchoring the advanced node foundry layer, I think this chip NATO concept or framework can work. In a word, we need to build a TSMC-anchored semiconductor ecosystem in Taiwan. That is, I'm not saying that Taiwan should adopt a mercantilist sense for the global chip supply chain, but rather Taiwan can reshape the global supply chain with strategic intent. A few years ago, Dr. Lai of the Prospect Foundation asked me to write an article arguing that the TSMC should not move to the US. And back then, the US, with all intent and purposes, wanted TSMC to migrate all its assets. Well, all may be an exaggeration, at least a significant part of its production to the US. And the reasons they initially use is that, well, there is cyber attack, TSMC, operational securities, and so on. But anybody with an engineering sense would know that lithography is not software, all right? It's a lot more complicated than modifying a line of software code, all right? So that excuse went away. But US continued to pressure Taiwan to let TSMC move to Arizona. Eventually they did. But that's fine. But what I'm arguing is that we do not want to be absorbed. We want to be indispensable or irreplaceable on our own terms. All right, so I'll rest here and elaborate a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you, Holmes. We'll now move to a general discussion, including questions from the audience. I think as the moderator, I will start with my own first question, and I will take one or two from the floor. Over the last half an hour, 40 minutes, we hear from all of you on a number of key issues. Strategic autonomy, AI as deterrence, building a new international platform, dealing with economic coercion, and revamping diplomatic strategies to align with, to get TSMC and business interests that align with the national interest. So my question is very simple. We see that in an interview with Nikkei earlier this year, Foreign Minister Lin talks about how Taiwan plans to play a vital role in forming a democratic supply chain with like-minded countries as a necessary response to the emergence of Chinese suppliers. So could I invite you guys to assess the efforts to create such a non-red supply chain? Feel free to pick a particular region, such as Japan, Eastern Europe, and Taiwan, or a particular theme, such as drones, which a number of you have mentioned. So this is my question. I think I will also take another question from the floor. If you are interested, please raise your hands and tell us your name and affiliation.
Well, I hate to be the person who asked the first question, but it seems that I've been doing that repeatedly. So Dominic Yang, University of Missouri. I work for the history department. Now I have one question. Can I have two questions? One for Stefan and the other one for Dr. Tristan Lu. And for Stefan, the question is very simple, right? Of course, AI, it's a new thing, and we're all trying to wrap our head around it, right? And it's a hypothetical question. If that the Taiwanese know that by using the AI technology in an ethical way, because we're talking about war, right? And they have the absolute advantage. It's like the US having the atom bomb during World War II. and the Japanese didn't have it. Is it ethical for Taiwan to defend itself uses AI in war on Chinese civilians or Chinese asset? So I know it's a very difficult question, and it's probably the question you're asking, but I want to hear your view on it. And for Dr. Liu, I just want to make sure that I understand what you are proposing. So you're proposing a sort of a metric international cooperation framework that's going to incorporate more of the business community. Are you suggesting, but you also mentioned NGO and others in, so how does this framework gonna work? Because you seem to be proposing that by incorporating a lot of business interests, that it's going to be, like, it's been, like, I've been reminded of the fact that, you know, businesses are out there to make money. They're not out there to democratize. So the example will be, you know, an authoritarian regime, American business people really love authoritarian regime, and they have been working with China until very recently. I'm sorry about that. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will turn to Stefan first, and then we'll turn to Dr. Liu.
So first, maybe a brief answer to Thompson's questions. When you look at the structure, the existing current structure of value chains in semiconductor production, I'm not talking about AI right now, from the first step, which is design, yes, the drawing of chips, not only in the US, but many, sure. But the production starts with the machineries which print the chips. And these machines are produced in Holland. To the other end of the chain, of the value chain, the so-called non-red countries have the full, have companies, key companies in every segment of the value chain, which means that in each segment there is a plurality of companies, but a very small number of companies, which is making the rest of the whole chain dependent on each element of the chain. It makes first the notion of sovereign AI or sovereign production of a semiconductor technology impossible. It's a dream. Europe can pour billions of euros for this. It's very good because we'll have many opportunities, especially for Taiwanese companies to collaborate with it. But it's a dream. It cannot work. China is talking a lot about its capacity to do that, but there is so much propaganda everywhere about Chinese technological advances that it's always difficult to, and the more they say that they are on the verge of doing it, the more doubt I have. The US is not capable to do that either. So instead of losing time and money to think about having these concentrated in one country, or we just need to take into consideration to just see the reality that we have in our group of non-red countries enough to do the whole chain and to survive by our own. So I think that would be my response. And regarding Dominique, you have questions about everything. And on top of being an exceptional scholar. My role was to propose the idea to hold a civic consultation, that the civil society could express itself in a situation where obviously the Congress cannot do it, at least for the moment. So it's difficult for me to express myself. First, I'm not a Taiwanese citizen, so I wouldn't like to give an answer first. I could not either respond as a philosopher or a specialist of political philosophy. I'm not a political philosopher. However, the question you ask is not simple at all, Dominic. I'm sorry to say, because we are on the very difficult question of the particular situation which is called war, which is the most horrible situation we know. So basically we cannot forecast what people will do first. And I would not like to, I don't see myself in a position right now in a peaceful country for the moment, even under threat, to judge who and what will be morally acceptable or not. So I refuse to respond. But your question is interesting because what I'm calling for is to not let us in Taiwan be in a position one day to have to do that without having debated it beforehand. And to be honest, if the question is a question of survival, for me the answer is if you are under threat by external aggression and that the aim of the aggressor is your disappearance, it is part of the answer. Anyway, whether we think that Taiwanese should accept some derogations to moral principle and human rights behavior in military affairs, the thing is that people convinced that they have to, they will. I'm not going to elaborate about what China believes in the social networks about what they would do to the first frontline soldiers when they catch them, right? I don't want to say that, and I won't say more, because saying that would be conducive to making their propaganda more efficient. But it's dreadful. If I was a Taiwanese, I would have a simple choice between being a brutal savage on the front line against them or leaving and deserting. So that's very dreadful. So we have to think in advance about what can we do or what you can do to avoid this, and avoiding this is probably going through huge technological investment, because the key issue here is to be smarter than them. It's not always difficult, and to imagine before everyone the next generation of AI use in military affairs.
Thank you, Stefan. We'll now turn to Dr. Liu before I go to the rest of the
Okay,
panelists.
I'll keep it short. The very important NGO will be industrial organizations, associations. Well, sometimes when government officials meet each other, it's all about very hard issues like tariff negotiations, but with no micro foundations. Okay, just like we are now facing 232 articles against our semiconductor industries, the US government doesn't seem to know the importance of Taiwanese semiconductor industries does to their own industries. So, put it in simple, Americans don't speak up for Taiwanese makers. So in order to avoid these kind of issues, why don't we have a platform to have industrial associations come together? And also, State Department has a think tank called CIPE, collaborating with different industrial associations and also, a Chamber of Commerce around the world to pursue the common grounds, common consensus on rule of doing business, free economy, and the regulation standards, or fake news, or any kinds of outdated non-tariff market entry barriers. Those are good topics. And also, if you want to put up international team in achieving some of the strategic goals, you also need those people to come together. And also, university plays a very important, because they have, symmetric metric collaborations over decades. Okay, so as also a university president, I would also want to shed light on the importance of that. But now there's a huge gap between them. Government officials make decisions simply, based on their own, experience, but not the collective, perspective from other important stakeholders. That's why Minister Lin said everybody is a diplomat. That's the essence of it, to call for participation from more, stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Matej, do you want to weigh in on the whole talk about supply chains?
Yes. Well, I want to piggyback on the vaccine story because Germany might not have given vaccines to Taiwan, but guess which 4 countries in Europe did? Lithuania, Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovakia. What do these 4 countries have in common? It's the Central European region, which has emerged to be the best friend of Taiwan in Europe over the last 5 years. Now, we have to discount Slovakia from this club for now, for a little bit, unfortunately, given our quite pro-Chinese government, but that government is going to lose the next election, and we will have the pro-Taiwanese crowd coming back to power sooner or later. So don't give up on the country just yet. Anyway, why I'm mentioning these countries is because if Taiwan and Europe want to cooperate together in developing the non-red supply chain, Central European countries are going to be vital for this, given their key role as collectively being the manufacturing hub in the EU, as a manufacturing hub in the so-called Factory Europe. And Taiwan has started to work on this a little bit. I mean, okay, the big TSMC factory that's going to be in Germany, and it's very understandable given that none of the Central European countries can muster that amount of financial power to provide the subsidy. But we already see collaboration deepening in other parts, in other sectors, right? And you mentioned drones, and that's something where we've seen a new wave of collaboration happening, for example, between Taiwan and Poland. We've seen many delegations coming back and forth, trying to establish drone manufacturing of Taiwanese companies within Poland. And I think this is going to be vital for Taiwan to explore even more, given that we also see now the push of the EU Commission to not just re-industrialize EU, but remilitarize EU, and investing in sectors that are quite strongly defense adjacent, like the drone sector, would be quite an important buy-in for Taiwan and people in Europe to, mutually care for each other's future, right? And it would be one way for Taiwan to show that it can deliver tangible economic results for the region, which, all of the political visits and gestures are very important, of course, but it's the tangible results that create a lasting relationship that ordinary people can get behind. Given that the drone sector is so strongly related to the defense issues, right? So it allows Taiwan to, on one hand, to frame it as an economic cooperation, but at the same time to break the taboos that are existing still in Europe around having more collaboration on defense-related issues. So I would urge Taiwan to really double down on this type of activity, because ultimately it will create manufacturing hubs of key technologies that are going to be vital for also Taiwanese defense effort, should it come to this sort of unfortunate event, which will at the end of the day be able to supply the Taiwanese defense effort when it would be needed.
Thank you, Matej. I think you raised a very good point about Europe's importance of Taiwan. I think in particular, a recent report, I think from the think tank DSAT, talks about how an executive order from Trump's administration has created some uncertainty about drone cooperation between Taiwan and the US. And I'm sure Europe will have a much bigger role to play. Holmes, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'll just quickly respond to your comment. I think 2 words comes into play. First is prioritization. The second is reciprocity. That is, of course, BioNTech or other German pharmaceutical or European pharmaceuticals have other countries and customers to tend to. So does TSMC, right? It has many, many customers all around the world. The fact is, Taiwanese government has stepped in and helped TSMC to prioritize its production to satisfy German car industry's requirements. But when it comes to reciprocity, it just simply didn't exist. So all I'm saying is that, again, on Taiwan's strategic naivety, Taiwan failed to leverage its semiconductor power as a diplomatic asset. And that is the key failure, right? And the second is the government did not offer goodwill. The government offered goodwill without guarantees. And that should be a lesson in the danger of silent diplomacy. That is, no matter how essential Taiwan wants to, no matter how essential Taiwan is to the global supply chain, goodwill alone does not yield respect or support. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think I'll turn, last but not least, to Veronica to see if you want to weigh in on the whole question of a democratic non-China supply chain. I think it takes 3 seconds.
Thank you. So I would like to build up on what has already been said. And I'm very happy to hear that there's a growing awareness of need for redundancies. And it was proven during the COVID time that even if something has been working without problems, and when there is a crisis on regional or global scale, we have to think about not only optimization, but also reasonable redundancies. And maybe sharing technology to broader extent. And again, I would point out to necessity of being more focused on resilience, on security, than on a capital gain. And I would also like to welcome very much the ideas of raising the awareness. Because developing technology, making it popular, it's one thing. And another thing is to understand what this technology is connected to. And that there are many threats that we are unfortunately not very aware of. And here I would like to point out the threats related to the Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything, and how we think that very simple software solutions or hardware solutions in general can pose a security threat because we are not aware that they might be exploited to collect the data and with a long time perspective. And when we add the axiology of three warfares, that the People's Republic of China or the гибридная война, the hybrid warfare represented by the Russian Federation, to that, they are very well known for not only involving non-state actors, but also for making an attack for a long time without the victim being aware that an attack has been going on. So there's a lot of things that we can cooperate on. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll now allow a last round of questions. I'll take several in one go. We give it to, is it Taniguchi-san? Then we go to Dirankun and then
Thank
Jane.
you, Chair. I just wanted to say to Mr. Liao, your goodwill and naivete have been well received by the Japanese. By the Japanese. Your goodwill has resonance with the Japanese so much that you remember that Japan provided Taiwan with millions of vaccines. Right? You remember that? Okay. One final thought is that it is very much important for Taiwan to continue to host events like this, picking up relevant topics. It's just a little bit akin to editing very good magazine with attractive titles so that you could attract attentions from all across the world. And so by so doing, Taiwan could continue to shine. Continue to shine is the most important thing, I think, for Taiwan.
Thank you. Thank you, Taniguchi-san. We'll now go to Diran-kun at the end on my left. And after her, we'll go to Jane from The Economist.
Hey, Thompson. Can I respond quickly to this gentleman's question? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, briefly.
Just 15 seconds. So in the case of Japan, Japan did reciprocate with for Taiwan's goodwill, right? But the question is, does it obligate Japan to respond positively or favorably? No, the answer is not, right? There is no obligation for Japan to respond that way. Well, same thing applied to Germany or to Uncle Sam. TSMC, like I said, was handed out like candies. Well, of course, that is an exaggeration, maybe. But what I'm saying is that in addition to the keyword that I just mentioned, prioritization, reciprocity, there's also need to be an obligation. That is, Taiwan's goodwill needs to have a guarantee so that other countries can be obligated to help Taiwan in time of need. Thank you.
Thank you, Holmes. Diran-kun, please.
Hi, I'm Diran-kun Uchino from Thailand Trade and Economic Office. I'm the Chief of Economic Affairs. Thank you very much for these questions. Very interesting. Lots of insights and views, especially from our colleagues from the European, from the US, and from Taiwan. And following up on Thompson's comments and questions about the successful alliance of the democratic supply chain, especially for the semiconductors, also the intelligence technologies for the future. And on the semiconductors, there will be a lot of questions that need more cooperation and answer. Whether be there the diversifications of the rare earth sourcings or the finding of the more cost-efficient manufacturing sites for the supply chains, and on this kind of many lists that we have to carry out. How do you see the role of the partnership with the New South Wales policy targeted countries, including like Australia, New Zealand, or ASEAN in this aspect? Thank you.
Thank you. Very valid question, given the geographical proximity. I think we have one last question to Jane over there.
This is Jane Rickards with The Economist. President Liu told an anecdote about Mike Pompeo saying that everyone had been invited to an event except the Chinese. And that made me think of a question that I really have for the organisers of the Ketagalan Forum. My question is, are Russian Federation diplomats invited to this event? And are officials from the Hong Kong and Macau offices, so essentially officials from Greater China, are they permitted to attend this event? And if so, have you seen much interest from them? Thank you. I'm talking about not just this year's Ketagalan Forum, but the forums over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wow. This question about whether officials from Hong Kong and Russia are allowed to join and the level of interest. That's from Jane. And then Kun Diran-kun has a question about the resilience and supply chain with Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia. I want to see who wants to pick either question. Matej, maybe you can go for a start, and then we'll go to Tristan.
I'll address the first question. Given that I'm not an organizer, I cannot really respond to the second one. But the first one, I think the cooperation with the countries covered by the New South Wales policy, especially the ASEAN countries, but also Australia, is going to be quite crucial in achieving the de-risking goals that EU has set for itself, and then the overall establishment of the non-red supply chain that Taiwan has been proposing. Of course, there's a big issue of raw materials dependence, right, that we need to deal with when it comes to China, and of course, Canada, it was mentioned, is one option on how to deal with it, but also Australia was going to be quite important, right? Indonesia as well. EU has been very actively moving towards concluding the FTA negotiations with Indonesia, with access to raw materials being a key issue that EU has in mind over there, right? So that's going to be quite important. Of course, the rest of ASEAN is going to be as well quite important when it comes to de-risking the manufacturing sectors, right? And it's gonna be, it's not gonna be an easy homework, I think, for the multinational corporations that are invested in China and have been dependent on getting their manufacturing done in China to move the production out of China into the ASEAN countries. But it is one of the options on the table. Of course, there's also risks attached, right? If it's only the manufacturing that moves, while the inputs for the manufacturing still remain within China, it will not be actually de-risking, it will be just creation of new problems. So we need to think quite holistically about this, and more policy coordination between the democratic countries from ASEAN, from East Asia, from Europe is going to be very much required to achieve this goal.
Thank you. And Tristan, you want to have a few words?
Many business leaders told us we exchange ideas about geographical and also economic relations with other important partners. They all said produce local and follow local, which means, for example, when Donald Trump raised the tariff to 32% against Taiwan, I heard from many big electrical, consumer electronics makers. They said that then we will go to United States directly, not from the Vietnams or from Thailand. Why? Because they will complicate the situation. So straightforwardly, just forcing fastball, just go to the United States and find a suitable place. So local for local will be the mainstream strategy for Taiwan. And of course, we want our industrial leaders to explore more opportunities in any other markets except the United States and China, especially for European countries, Central European countries. I would love to, as the advisor, will urge our government to pay more attention to that. But basically for local. But if there's no opportunities over there, if the market hasn't gone up, I think they will relocate very fastly. This is all I can say. So with some, countries that full of market opportunity, but no strong economic ties, I would say in the current government, we're going to put in the second wave. Very straightforward. Okay, put in the second wave. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Stefan, you have a few words to add.
Well, regarding the supply chain, I would like to add my little 2 cents. The fact is that we don't cook an omelette without breaking eggs, as we say, and we don't prepare for a war without reorganizing the intendancy and all what we have to mobilize to fight a war. And what is happening is that President Donald Trump is preparing for a war, hopefully to avoid it, and the scale of this war is not American inland, is the whole world. So the brutal way that he has announced and dealt with these tariffs, of course, has shocked many people, countries, and press media, intellectuals. However, one day, if it happens that he made the right choice by organizing part of the world to be solidary and to help each other, to avoid being invaded by that country or taken over technologically and so on, we'll be quite thankful to him. I'm not here to defend him, but it is obvious that everybody's doing whatever he wants, and countries are like using existing facilities and trade agreements to, in a way, to cheat their own partners, like when they host Chinese companies, and that they help, obviously and consciously, Chinese companies to produce products that are branded, not branded Chinese products. That's what was one of the core issues behind these negotiations imposed by Donald Trump. This is also one part of the story, and we should not forget that one of the first victim or target of his policies is an American company in AI. And I don't want to destroy a national icon here, but Huang Zhongqin is a very perfect example of this, like trying to use the existing network of possibilities and trade networks and agreements to sell his products everywhere, including in China. Remember last time he came, just with this personal war with President Trump, all what he invented and all the declaration he made like twice a day, 3 times a day in Taipei, like each other contradicting each other, in order to show or to try to find a way to still go on selling GPUs to China. And that should be recalled. One of the biggest losers is an American company, and that's decided by Donald Trump. It's fair in a way.
Thank you. I think we're running out of time, so I'll invite Holmes and also Veronica to give any last remarks you want to have.
Thank you, Thompson. So Taiwan should strategically orchestrate influence over global supply chain, right? And that Taiwan can do that. It's not a castle in the sky. Rather, Taiwan has the asymmetric advantage as a bargaining chip. That is, we need to form a structural framework to ensure survival, especially when the country's survival is at stake at this point. And this is a whole of society, not just government, it's a whole of society effort that the people of Taiwan should continue to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. And Veronica, please.
Thank you. I wanted just to mention that also when it comes to rare earth minerals, that we allowed China to be in such a position, such a strategic position when it comes to rare earth minerals, crucial for the new green technologies. We can also take under consideration recycling. And then another thing, just to repeat myself, is to think outside the box. And think about something that it's not necessarily complicated and costly, you know, the businessman mindset. How can I make money on this? But what is useful? And maybe at some cost of the capital gain, we can increase the security. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we've really answered Jane's question, but that might be more of a question for the organizer today or the government, since they will be aware of the entry rules and who's showing up. Nonetheless, thanks again to our guests today, Stefan, Veronica, Matei, Tristan, and Holmes, providing fresh thinking and discussion about the way forward for Taiwan's economic and tech and industrial diplomacy and relevant issues like AI and drones and tariffs. So once again, thank you.
今天的台湾不是在选择要不要脱离中国，而是我们应该去深刻去追问一个问题：我们真的曾经是中国的一部分吗？
从国际法角度，有史以来第一个真正拥有台湾全岛领土主权的国家是日本。
台湾不需要从哪里来独立出来，我们本来就不是哪一个国家的附属。我们需要的是什么？是完成那一段被冻结的历史。
旧金山合约让台澎领土主权不属于任何国家。中日合约是确定了这一件事情。
开罗宣言跟波茨坦公告里头似乎也被错误解读。
开罗宣言它是一个宣言，类似 MOU 嘛，
不具有法律效力，的确是。
弄给人骗了。马英九经常就用开罗宣言说，依据开罗宣言，台湾是他的，那中国的。弄得很骗。
国际法早就已经为我们留下一条通往尊严的道路，让台湾的人民真正做一次选择，为台湾写下未来的名字。各位海内外的观众朋友，谢谢您常常在线上，不管参与我们的直播还是影片的播放。好快的时间已经3年了。您记不记得我们频道创立的第一天？这是在3年前，2022年的7月9号的那一天。那个时候呢，摄影机是借来的，包括灯光都是好朋友突然之间提供给我们。当然呢，摄影师是临时的志工，很多的朋友提供了资源，协助我们完成了首播。这是在当时没有任何的资源，更是没有金主，只有一个简单的信念。在这个非常混乱而且有点分裂的年代当中，我们希望可以说真话，做深度，守住价值，做我所熟悉的事情。3年的时间很快过去了，这条路走得相当的艰辛，非常的不容易，但因为有您，我们撑了下来。过去3年来，我们的小军超人 Plus 已经突破了2亿5千万人次的观看，而且订阅人数已经来到了47万人。不过在会员人数方面，才刚刚突破了2000人。这些都不只是一个数字，而是每一个关心台湾、关心国际、关心真相的灵魂，一次一次透过了按下播放的选择，您跟我站在一起。我相信过去这段时间，你也曾经在深夜里头听着小君姐对着镜头娓娓道来，也许你也曾经在混乱的新闻洪流中，靠着我们的分析，找回了思考的力量。我们没有背景，我们有的是立场。什么立场呢？站在人民的这一边，站在台湾的这一边。一人难挑千金担，但如果我们愿意一起挑，一起抬，千金也能够步步为营。很多人在这段时间常常问小君姐，你怎么撑下来的？哇，3年很不容易耶，你是怎么烧钱的？其实很难很短的时间之内跟大家分享。其实我也有时候会笑笑说，因为我有很多人请我喝咖啡，那是一杯又一杯支持的象征，甚至写着你不孤单的讯息，甚至呢，在我的户头里头告诉我，这是他奉献我继续努力的一点点小小的 donate， 一点小小的回馈。所以呢，每一次有人加入会员，都会说我愿意和你一起走下去，我感激在心，点滴在心头。我们都知道台湾需要有声音，但是这样的声音不能够靠运气，也不能够靠流量的算法，它只能够靠一群有信念的人默默支持。所以在今天，小君姐再一次诚挚邀请您成为我们的频道会员，就像是一根根的竹签撑起了一座竹楼，就像是一滴滴的露水，它可以凝聚成改变的力量，不用很多，只要您愿意。事实上，我告诉您，累积比如说50杯的咖啡的价格，就能够让我们多录1集的节目，可以多诞生一篇深度报道，多陪台湾走一段更深远的路。3年的时间当然不是一个句点，它是一个全新的起点，让我们在下一个3年当中可以走得更稳更远。也感谢您一路的相挺，也期待您加入我们的行列，点选下方加入会员，或者是小君喝咖啡，一起让真实的声音不被淹没。我相信您知道，我们的存在是因为您，而您也是让我们继续存在的关键性力量。有心就有力，我们永远不放弃。谢谢您。